Put a finger on Philly's pulse at WPPMLP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. Catch us on TuneIn, Localize, and at phillycam.org. We're rehumanizing radio in your own backyard.
You're listening to CRAIC Radio, and my name is Sean Timmons. Our Music Maker's guest today is songwriter, guitarist, vocalist, and band leader KEELEY Moss of the Irish indie rock band KEELEY. No stranger to CRAIC Radio, we featured music from her original group Session Moths and the earlier releases by her current group. We caught up with KEELEY in Dublin to discuss the recently released second EP, Echo Everywhere. First, by way of introduction, here's the debut single by the band, KEELEY, from October 2020, and this is titled Last Words. So we're here with KEELEY Moss here on CRAIC Radio. Welcome.
Hello, Sean.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. We've been playing your music for some time since I think I discovered your band Session Moths 5 years ago or something.
We released our first single January 2017. We were together for that whole year. So you were certainly the first person overseas to pick up on Session Moths, yeah.
Okay. Well, so you're in Dublin. What part of Dublin do you call home?
Well, I call Sandy Cove home. I've been calling Sandy Cove home for the last 14 years almost, which would have been unheard of for me because I'd lived a very nomadic lifestyle prior to that. But yeah, I live in Sandy Cove, which is a lovely, very quiet seaside hamlet.
When you think of Dublin, if somebody'd never been to Dublin, is there one thing that stands out about Dublin that you think they should see if they came to visit?
Well, let me see. Yes, actually, there is a brilliant modern art museum. If you're into art at all, it's really something to behold. It's called IMA, which is the acronym for the Irish Museum of Modern Art, and it's located in Kilmainham, in what was formerly the Royal Hospital Kilmainham, a very large, lavish looking building. And it's just an amazing place to immerse yourself in. And it's completely free, and you could just spend hours there. And not only is the art always interesting and always really thought provoking and quite emotion provoking too, but also the grounds are beautiful. There's really lovely, lush gardens nearby. And there's just something about the vibe of the place and even the smell of the place. I love the smell of those rooms, of those large rooms that house the art. It's my favorite place in Dublin. So, yeah, I would say Emma all the way.
All right, that's a good one. I don't think I've ever been, so I'll be there next time. I'll visit next time. So I wonder what your earliest memories of music are and what role did music play in your childhood?
Wow, well, that's a lovely question because that kind of takes me back. It has me sifting through the mists of time and just remembering what it was like hearing music and having it enter my world. And to the point where it actually became my world. I mean, the first music that I remember hearing is a song I love to this day, which is Stepping Out by Joe Jackson. A fantastic song with fascinating lyrics. And I remember hearing Woman by John Lennon, which was another great song. I think the first thing that I really loved and really kind of became an active fan of was the Pet Shop Boys, West End Girls, which just captivated me straight away. And then I got their album, the first album I actually ever owned. And I still think it's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite albums to this day. There's a real sense of realism about the Pet Shop Boys. The songs are rooted in a very urban reality. Songs that would address the guilt and shame and sex and love. The songs are unashamedly romantic, but always tinged with that realism. I find the Pet Shop Boys never try to downplay their intelligence and Neil Tennant's intelligence as a lyricist. That's a lovely thing as a listener when you feel that you're not being condescended to. As a kid, I remember really being able to relate to those songs. There was just something about the combination of the very melodic and moving chord sequences and soundscapes and the lyrics and the adult world that it alluded to that I had no comprehension of, but it gave me a kind of a fascinating bird's eye view of at that time.
That's interesting. A little bit later on, you discovered the Smiths, and that took you in a whole different direction. Tell us about how you were introduced to that band and what happened after that.
That's a lovely story because it's very much a kind of a coming of age sense of just falling head over heels in love with music in a way that is life changing. It completely altered the course of my life. It's impossible to know whether I would have embarked upon this musical trail otherwise. I was a child. I was in a thing called the Gaeltacht, which anyone who is familiar with Irish culture will know that it's kind of like a summer camp where you go during summer holidays, ostensibly to learn the Irish language. But really, in reality, what happens is you meet boys and girls and you discover them and discover yourself and have really fantastic teenage experiences and all of that. So it was a really vivid time. I mean, it's a really vivid time looking back because that moment that I discovered the Smiths, I had gone to the dorm of this boy in particular that I'd met on our way down on the train actually. And we just got chatting and we got chatting about music. And he was quite a bit older than me. He was about 17. But I went to his dorm. It was a Saturday, I always remember. And I opened the door and I heard this sound. I didn't know what it was. And it turned out it was the compilation album Louder Than Bombs, which had been released only in the USA to introduce an American audience to the Smiths. And I heard that and my life changed. Instantly, I knew this was what I had unwittingly been searching for and didn't realize until that moment that was missing in my life. And I just fell in love in that moment with that music. And the more I heard it, the more fascinated I became and the more I wanted to inhabit that space where that music was created and learn more about how it was created and who created it. And it opened a world because hearing the Smiths and learning about them as people and who they'd influenced and who influenced them and the records that came out around that time. And it just was like, that was my starting point because prior to that, I didn't really have any means of discovering alternative culture and indie culture, because with no older siblings, and often people would have a cool older brother or a cool uncle. I didn't have those things. So I was kind of blundering in the dark, and fortunately I found my way to the Smiths, and they kind of, showed me the way.
What was it about the Smiths? Was it the lyrics? Was it the music?
I think it was a combination of things. I tend to see music very much in terms of the overall effect that it has. Even though I take great care with lyrics that I write, to me, like a great guitar hook or a great guitar break or a great guitar sound is the equivalent of any lyric. They're all integral elements, as is bass and drums and keyboards and production. And I think with the Smiths, it was, again, the realism, which is something that I kind of picked up on with the Pet Shop Boys, a sense that I just knew I was being told the truth. I wasn't being lied to. The sentiments weren't being sugar-coated.
Well, we want to talk a little bit about your music, and we can't talk about your music without you giving us some background on the story of Inga Maria Hauser.
That's a really good idea, because I suppose to have an insight into the music that I make, and the music that I make in conjunction with my bandmates, Marty and Martin and Tim, and with my producer, Alan, Inga looms so large in that landscape that it would be remiss not to talk about her and talk about her unique influence. What happened was, back in 2016, I read about the unsolved murder of Inga Maria Hauser. Inga Maria Hauser was a German student, artist, and musician from Munich, Germany, who was murdered in 1988 whilst in the middle of a backpacking trip. Her first solo journey away from home, away from her parents. She was in her second last year of school in Munich at the time. And she was murdered in a very strange, very unusual circumstances. It was a case that was unprecedented at the time. And remarkably, it's still unprecedented to this day, because Inga is the only instance of a sexually motivated murder in Northern Ireland where a tourist is concerned, ever. There are no other cases in Northern Ireland where a tourist has found themselves the victim of sexually motivated murder. So from the moment that I read about her and read about the case and the specific time it occurred, and knowing and reading about how her murder had followed on from her having what was actually the best week of her life. She'd been traveling through England and Scotland in the spring of 1988. And I just found that so captivating and beautiful, which is so at odds with what happened to her. But her mission, when she set off with such hope in her heart and such idealism, and I just fell in love with her soul. I've never heard of anyone falling in love with someone who A, is dead, and B, they never met. And it's a strange, strange thing, but it's just, the heart is an inexplicable device, and sometimes you find yourself taken off course into all sorts of strange tangents. And this has been the case for me over the last 6 years. But very soon after learning about Inga's case, I felt the need to try and do something or contribute something in some way. And at that time, the case had gone unsolved for 28 years. And there hadn't been any advances in the case for a number of years. I really wasn't sure if anyone was going to be interested in this, but I was fascinated by it. So I decided to start a blog. I spent about 4 months researching it. I published part 1, and to my amazement, it went viral on the first day that I published part 1. So that led me to then get involved in a public campaign and meet all sorts of people over the last 6 years, from police, media, politicians, Inga's family members, and be taken into all sorts of strange directions that an indie musician ordinarily never would be. And I found myself kind of straddling the two very different worlds of indie music and true crime. And what I decided to do, or what I felt I had to do, was to bring those two worlds together in a way that hadn't been done before, and to make Inga the subject of all of my songs, and of our live set, and of the album that's been created, and of the 2 EPs that have come out so far. And it was something that even in session months I had already started embarking on, because our second single, which you very kindly played a number of times, Plundered Past, I'd written that about Inga. So it's something that's been very long term on a very kind of profound emotional level. And I just feel, she's not around and she's not here, but I'm desperate to keep her memory alive and to sort of try and fulfill her dream as much as possible. I mean, it was her dream to travel the world. And the way I see it is, though she didn't get to achieve that, or she was just on the verge of setting out to do that when she was murdered at the age of 18. But the thing is, the songs that I'm writing about her are traveling around the world because, I mean, Brave Warrior ended up being playlisted by 215 radio stations around the world. And to me, there's a beautiful, belated, posthumous triumph in that for Inga. It's like these songs that she's inspired are doing the traveling for her all these years later.
You have said that all of the songs that you're writing now, all the songs that you're performing, they're all based on her story. As an artist and as a songwriter, is it limiting for you to focus all your attention on one subject? Or do you think that there are just so many angles that you could approach this story from?
That's a good question because I've put myself in a difficult position. Because if you think about it, even though Inga's case is very complex, the way that I write, it's very much prompted from an emotional point of view. And I've already written 50 songs about Inga. So you think to yourself, well, how much longer can this go on? But emotionally, it's still the only thing that stirs me. And I still find myself finding new aspects to write about and new ways to express the tragedy of what happened to her and the beauty of what preceded what happened to her. And to give a voice to this voiceless person and to just tell her story. And finding that Inga's case is so complex and the feelings that it generates are so copious that it has not yet happened that I've actually run out of gas. But one thing that I try and do as much as possible is to sing the songs in Inga's own words. So for example, Last Words, which is the first single, which is on the Brave Warrior EP, the chorus of that song consists of her last words. And there aren't that many, surviving examples of Inga's words, but I've managed to basically turn all of them into songs.
We should let the listeners listen to some music, and the EP that's currently out is called Echo Everywhere, and the latest single from that is called To London Sunrise, and the band is called KEELEY. You're listening to Crack Radio. I'm Sean Timmons. You've just heard To a London Sunrise from the EP Echo Everywhere from the band KEELEY. The band is unique in that all of the songs are inspired by the case of the murdered backpacker Inga Maria Hauser. They take this further with the maxim, bliss out, don't miss out, which defines the feel of the recorded music and the essence of the live show. Let's return to our conversation with bandleader KEELEY Moss. What strikes me about that song is that it's got this Pink Floyd meets the Smiths. Will you accept that?
Very much so. I mean, if anything could actually describe my musical modus operandi, that would be it. I mean, Pink Floyd are my favourite band, and the Smiths are probably my second favourite band. And the Smiths were, really my year zero musically. And the Floyd for me came a little bit later because I didn't actually hear my first Floyd album until I was 19. To me, those two bands, essentially, when it comes down to it, that's kind of what I'm and what we're trying to do.
I want to shift gears a little bit here. How would you describe a live show by the band KEELEY?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm a Gemini. And one of the things about Gemini, I suppose the most common trait of a Gemini is the duopoly, the two sides of the coin. And live, there's very much two sides to what we do. One of those sides is a very kind of blissful sonic. That kind of ties in with our maxim. We have a band maxim, which is bliss out, don't miss out. Because one of the things that had been kind of overlooked with Inga's case, because what happened to her was so horrendous and her fate was so grim, the original purpose of her journey and her travels, it was kind of overlooked and was kind of obscured. And I was really keen to kind of resurrect that as much as possible and shine as much of a light on that and on Inga as a person. Because very much that trip reflected who she was and what she was interested in. And there's just something really blissful and very kind of magical about the thought of being in England in springtime in late March, early April 1988. There's something about that period of time I just find very fresh and very kind of dreamy, especially at that stage in her life, like she's only 18, kind of setting off on your journey into the world. And it must have been so fresh and exciting. And I know how exciting it was from her postcards and her diary entries that have survived where she talks about how she felt. So something that I kind of really wanted to try and musically conjure up, if I could get the sound of her joy and the sound of that vivaciousness and the blissful essence of that was tied into something that I kind of wanted to do anyway, which is to create sound and create music that would bliss people out and bliss myself out and bliss us as a band out. The reason for that is in life, there's a lot of stressful things and life itself can be a bit of a straitjacket, with the pressures that are foisted upon us by the modern world, the corporate world. And that's where art is so important because it enables us to escape and to have an outlet to revel in and to just take ourselves out of reality and experience something really enjoyable and calming. So I kind of wanted to have as much of a sense of serenity and something that we create live as a band, but with our live sound, it's really dreamy. But then being a Gemini, I couldn't resist basically inserting some wild elements. There's some really explosive moments within the set where it gets like really noisy and quite wild. And we kind of resort to overdrive and just because there's just something so beautifully brutal about sound. When you turn the amp up to 11, it's a beautiful thing to get lost in the noise, to get lost in music. And hopefully I think people who come to see us live will experience that for themselves. And it'll be a kind of a collective losing of ourselves in the overall sonic cauldron.
Here's a question I like to ask people. As a songwriter, is there a song that you wish you had written? And if there is, why?
Oh God, there's so many. There's just so many. The song that's actually coming into my mind, because it would be such a brilliant thing to get to play this live and to know that you've written it. It would be A Promise by Echo and the Bunnymen. It's such a simple song in a way. It kind of coasts on this guitar riff of Will Sargent's. It's a fabulous song. I'd go with that. A Promise by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Great choice. Here's an unfair question, because I know they're all your children. But if you had to choose one of your own songs as your favorite.
I love your questions because they're so kind of music-centric. My favorite song It's actually my favorite song that I've ever written, is a song called Days in a Daze, which is the first song in our live set. It's on the album. It almost wasn't on the album because, Alan and I had almost finished the record, but I thought we have to get Days in a Daze onto the record. But yeah, Days in a Daze would be my favorite.
All right, listen, we got to wrap up. Time always takes over. We're going to finish off at a track called The Glitter and the Glue, which I love the title. Give us a little background on that one before we listen to it.
Okay, well, this is quite an unusual song in that it's one of the only songs that I've written that isn't exclusively about Inga, but it's actually about myself as much as it's about Inga. And it's about just basically finding myself in this strange situation where I wrote this blog and published it, went viral on the first day, which totally caught me unawares. And I found myself besieged with emails from people all over the world, but particularly Northern Ireland. And I was just trying to deal with this deluge that was incoming. And anyone who's had anything go viral will know it. When you're not prepared, it's an intense experience. And just finding myself kind of trying to hold on for dear life and figure out, wait, what's happening here? And trying to deal with, a flurry of emails and, all that stuff happening. And the blog has gone viral a few times since then for various reasons relating to developments in the case in terms of arrests or relating to my having published the audio of Inga, things like that. So yeah, The Glitter and the Glue was just me trying to make sense of the confusion and of the bewilderment that I felt in the aftermath of those experiences. And the line, "What a life, what a mess I've gotten into." I mean, that's something that I felt about myself. And it's obviously something that very much reflects Inga and her reality, because what a mess she got into. I mean, she was on a completely different course in terms of life from where she ended up and how she ended up and who she ended up. It was a very strange, very tragic twist of fate. And there are those things that shape our destiny that we're maybe not aware of at the time, but then subsequently end up having a hugely transformative effect.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking that time to talk to us. We look forward to the album coming out, and maybe you guys will get over to Philadelphia one of these days.
Oh, we would love to. Honestly, as a band, we are so looking forward to touring the States. And we've had so many really lovely responses from people in the USA and Canada. And even like the blog has a significant following in America, which is amazing because Inga's case doesn't have any connections to America. So yeah, Philly, we're coming your way. I think the plan is for us to go over and do a tour of the States in 2023.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Well, thanks again.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, Sean.
What a life.